Okay, so today is September 15th, 2020, and we're doing this interview by Zoom, obviously, because of the pandemic. So can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is VW Chitnis. I'm a sitar player based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I run an organization called the North Carolina Raga Revival, which
Wonderful.
is pre-pandemic. We were a monthly concert series celebrating the music of the Indian diaspora in collaborations with other world music artists and dancers.
Wonderful. So can you start with your first memory, your earliest memory?
Yes, wow. Um, Well, when I was very little, my grandmother and grandfather came to visit from India, and I must have been about 2.5 years old. And I'd play this game with my grandmother, who wore a sari, that I would take part of the sari and unfasten it, and then try to run around her, try to unfurl her sari, but she would just spin around at the same speed, and this would go on for quite some time. Um, and I guess she got dizzy doing it, but that's my official earliest memory. It's around 2.5, and I think most of my other memories start around the age of 4. When I was that young, um, I remember being 4 and not being able to remember anything about being 3. So by the time I turned 5, I was terrified that I was going to forget everything I knew about being 4. So I was relieved that I got to keep those memories through my life. Um, I grew up in Raleigh. My parents are immigrants from North India, from the state of Gujarat. And they moved here in the early 1970s. My sister was born in a town in India called Nadiad. She's 8 years older than me. And then I have a middle sister who's 3 years older than me, and she was born in Raleigh. We went to school in North Carolina in the 1980s and 1990s. And we had a record player growing up, a radio, and a black and white TV. The VCR came much later in our house than other households. There was no cable. So we listened to a lot of radio, and especially in the summers. Um, my parents were kind of a different time and didn't really send us to camp or do a lot of activities, but we'd go to the pool, we'd go to the library and do things like that. We spent a lot of time in the house, and we spent a lot of time listening to music on cassettes and vinyl. And um, two of the records that my father had in his collection were Indian classical records. And as a kid, they didn't really sound that um, reachable to me. I didn't have much understanding of what I was hearing. One was a record by an artist named Bismillah Khan, who played the Shanai. And the other was a obscure Ravi Shankar album that I very rarely see anywhere these days. My dad probably picked these up on one of his trips to India in the early 80s. Most of the other records we had there was some children's records and some gospel and things like that. My parents grew up in a Methodist mission in India, so we're Christian. And most of my exposure to Indian culture, I guess, came through my family, and I'm part of a big family. My father is one of 7. My mom is one of 5, and most of their siblings immigrated after them to the US between 1975 and 1990. And so we would always go see cousins and have that kind of connection through our family, our language, our food. Um, but here in Raleigh, there wasn't, I had a few Indian friends, but the majority of my friends were just my friends in public school. Um, and my elementary school was pretty racially mixed, so my friends were like that. I think there's an experience going on in North Carolina now amongst young children that if you are going to school in a certain part of Wake County, you might have 30-40% Asian in your school, and your whole friend group can come from your temple or your community. Now I've seen that a lot, but when we were in school, there wasn't that many Indian people. Maybe in my elementary school of uh, 400, there might have been six, something like that. So yeah, I was interested in music in general. I didn't have much music training as a child. My sister took piano lessons, and my other sister got voice lessons, but I just didn't show much interest in it. So I guess I didn't, I just didn't get those kinds of lessons. When I was in middle school, I had a friend who played the guitar, and he got me interested in playing the guitar. And I asked my mom and dad if they would be able to get me a guitar, and they were not very interested in it. They just turned it down. They were like, "You're not going to do this. You won't. We'll buy it, and it'll just collect dust or whatever." And my friend's mom, the one that played guitar, she was really kind of one of those people that, not really a stubborn personality, but she just thought about it, and some time went by, and she had a friend who passed away, whose husband uh, played the guitar, and through his wife's passing, he found some connection with Buddhism and relinquishing his material possessions. So he got rid of a lot of his things. And I ended up with this old 1970s guitar that belonged to my friend's mom's friend's husband. And I went over to his house one day, and he gave me like my first guitar lesson. And it was just some chords, and I learned "Oh My Darling Clementine." And I was probably about 12 or 13 years old, but I really liked it. And I played it left-handed for a little while, and then one day I decided to switch to right-handed because the guitar just looked weird upside down. And I made that switch early, in a month or two of learning it.
So you're
And
naturally left-handed?
what's that?
You're naturally left-handed, or?
Yes, I'm naturally left-handed. Um, and one of the things for me that got me interested, yes, I was kind of learning independently, but by the end of middle school, I had other people to play music with. And that was the real kind of fire starter, that when you have a friend that's doing it with you, it's so much more fun and so much easier. And it's not something that you feel you're just doing for the sake of learning something. You are, and so there was motivation and incentive. And by the time I was in the ninth grade, I was, we were trying to play in different bands and things. And I was in a couple of these kinds of bands that would play out at the high school show or this or that. There were opportunities. And I got better and better at guitar. And one of the things that happened was the people that I was exposed to, like, it was interesting. It was like a magnet of all the other musicians I met just because I could play the guitar. And by my sophomore year of high school, I was in a band that was recording and playing shows and doing quite well. And my mother's father passed away, and she went back to India, my grandfather. And when she came back, I had asked for a sitar, and she brought a sitar back. And she says that my grandfather had something to do with selecting it. I'm not sure the whole details of it, but it was around that trip that she came back with this instrument. And when I saw the thing, I was just totally like, this is so foreign, and blown away by it. And it kind of just sat. I mean, I tried to play it, but I didn't have a teacher. So the first few months, it kind of just sat around, and I didn't really know where to go with it, or how to tune it or anything. And we had some family friends come from South Carolina that were my parents' friends. They were a dentist couple, and the wife knew how to play something on sitar, and she taught me how to basically hold it and to pluck it, and just some very basic things. And so yeah, I was kind of on my way at that point. A few months later, after asking at enough Indian grocery stores, we found a teacher in Durham. And the drive from our house to her house was probably about 40 minutes. Um, and we made that drive every week for a 30-minute lesson, sometimes an hour lesson. She was a really nice lady. And I'm still in contact with her. She lives in Cary now. Um, and so, yeah, I started learning the basic structure of Indian classical music, and just found another kind of gateway to learning about Indian culture outside of my family and our social group. And it was great. I would play in the as a high schooler. I have these opportunities to play at the international festival. I played in my high school for different events, and there was also a Hindu temple in Morrisville that would do a yearly kind of local talent night. And I performed there a few times as well. And those were very invaluable experiences. Um, looking back at those performances, they weren't always the greatest. I was still kind of learning how to perform on this instrument, and was serious enough to play it every day and try to connect with it. But at a certain point, I guess by the end of high school, um, I didn't feel like I had a path to playing it. And I don't know, there's all sorts of things that go on around that point in your life where you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life and what school you want to go to. And I ended up at the local university here in Raleigh, NC State, learning science. And there wasn't really much time for music at that point. And all of my projects all of my friends had kind of separate, we'd gone our own ways in school or in other life paths. And, that first year, it was mostly just me being in school, being a college freshman. And I did take the sitar to college, but it kind of just lived under my bed. I maybe took it out twice. And started playing music again more that summer after my freshman year of college, and just finding an identity playing. Some of it was rock music, some of it was more like R&B, and playing in clubs and doing well with that. Still had not really found a way to at that point that I didn't have any avenues to perform sitar. And in my mind, as a project oriented person, I just wasn't going to practice something much unless I had a way to play it. So I went back to school in the fall, and I think I enrolled in textiles by that point. I was just learning something kind of random, and it was okay, and kind of just getting by and going through the motions. And at one point, halfway through my second semester, I just kind of got disgusted with this whole idea of I'm learning this thing so I can do this, and I didn't feel very happy learning it. So I decided to take some time off from trying to be a college student,